Evening. Okay, so I'm aware of the fact that unfortunately the people that have tried to use the ID, not the link for the Zoom, did not receive accurate details. So there may well be people coming on as we go along. So we might repeat one or two things along the way, but same rules apply from last week. Everything is anonymous, so you can't see each other. If you message in and use the chat option, we will be able to see it, but you guys won't. So this is to protect everyone's confidentiality as well, and we hope that everybody feels comfortable to send in all your comments. We would love to know at the beginning just where you are, so which part of the country you're in, if you want to mention your school, and we can get a bit of an idea of who's on, where you are, because really such a key part of these meetings, these webinars, is that we all come together. We're here, we're sort of sharing the common struggles, the common worries that we have. We're all here, we're in it, and that itself makes us feel that we're not alone. So really, as we go along, please send in where you are. I want to hear your questions, anything that's bothering you. Use the chat option, the anonymous chat option, and also feel free to also tell us about how you're managing, what ideas you are using, maybe from last week's event, or some of your own tips that we can share with the other participants tonight. So with me, as last week, is Deborah. Deborah, good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Yaakov. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. And Deborah, you're give us, for those people that are new, do you want to just give us a little intro?
Yes, sure. Everybody, I'm a psychotherapist and I specialize in all types of anxieties and challenging situations for children and teens and young adults. And I live in Israel. And it's a pleasure to be on today, Yaakov, and to have the opportunity to answer some questions to help alleviate some of the challenges that we are thinking about, perhaps a little more than we would like, some of those emotions that we are experiencing at the moment, so that we can possibly attempt to find an easier way to navigate the situation that we're facing at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a hard situation, I guess, because there's so much uncertainty. We don't really know what's happening. We don't really know how long everything's going to be, what's going to happen, and that probably makes us feel unrelaxed, on edge, not really ourselves.
That's right. I think we're seeing a sort of a change in our feelings in comparison to last week. Last week, we were all, no matter where we were in the world, shocked and horrified, and it was unprecedented. And it was still, we tried to come to terms with what we were hearing. This week, we are already sort of second week in. We are just as shocked and horrified, but that initial surprise factor has passed. We're becoming to be more aware that this is what's happening right now. And I think it's just a bit unsettling, exactly as you say, because we don't know how long, in what capacity, what this means for us both in Israel, what it means for Jewish people abroad. And it's challenging. There's many questions that come up for all of us. And I think it's important to have this opportunity.
Absolutely. So we've got one teen, and by the way, it's really nice when you do send in your questions or your comments or anything like that. And thank you very much. We all appreciate the thank yous as well. That's really nice. Thank you. That was from someone from Gibraltar. But maybe just put your age, you can put which school you are, where you're from. That just sort of puts a bit of context. So we've got one of you from Belgium says, thank you for the breathing exercises tip. It really helped me during the week. Maybe you can share it again with the people that were not on the last Zoom. And yes, we will definitely do something. We'll do a relaxation exercise during tonight. Deborah, what I wanted to ask you was, I think a lot of people, particularly in Europe, I know that we've got some teens from Israel and we've got some teens from Gibraltar. There's definitely a lot of teenagers feeling quite unsafe, especially in the UK. They're walking around the streets a bit on edge. I've noticed myself doing it as well, a bit on alert. We're not relaxed as we're walking. Is that normal, first of all? And if yes, what can we do about it?
It's extremely normal and to be expected under the circumstance. I think that especially when we see what took place last Saturday in central London with the protests that were going on, the anti-Israel protest, pro-Palestinian protests, it's unsettling. And it's very disconcerting, and it can make us want to sort of look over our shoulder whilst we're walking in the street. We're much, much more aware. We can't do anything to take away those fears. Why? Because they are extremely valid, and they are based on a current situation that is frightening for Jewish people. So we have to be aware that there's no quick fix. There's nothing that could be said that will make us feel, oh, okay, fine, that's much better. I'm going to feel great. Okay, so we have to be aware that those feelings are legitimate, they are expected, and it's tough to be in that dynamic. However, irrespective of the protests and the sort of fight back against what Israel is doing and the narrative that we are hearing and seeing on the news and the like, remember, it looks like a huge amount of people, okay? But actually, in reality, it's a group of people that are making a big fuss, okay? And also, we have there is much more increased presence in the UK, especially in London, around all the Jewish areas from the police. The government is in full support of the Jewish community. And whilst we may see that increased presence, it might make us feel a little bit anxious, but actually we can flip that straight on its head and realize that this is great because this is preventative. This is there to keep us safe and to protect us. And just be aware, we have to be alert, but also to take comfort from the increased presence that we're seeing and support from the non-Jewish community and the government in the UK. I think this is very encouraging under the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that, whilst we do have to maybe still be more careful than we were before, we don't have to walk around thinking that we're sort of under attack.
100%. And also it's important to remember, whilst we said at the beginning, Yaakov, you said quite rightly, there's anxiety because we don't know the trajectory. We don't know the time frame that we're looking at here, but we know it's not going to be forever. This is a period of time, especially we're going to take a look, like last week, we looked 1 week ahead. We're going to look for the next week. This is what the dynamic is. And slowly but surely, we will prevail as a country, as an army here in Israel, and slowly the dynamic will settle and will dissipate. It's not how it's going to be forever, but at the moment, just for now, we need to keep an extra awareness when we're out and about, but know that there is a lot going on in the background to help keep us safe and supported, which is very encouraging.
Yes, absolutely. We don't like, human beings by nature, and some people more than others, but we don't like things that are not certain, that we don't really know exactly what's happening, and it's all a bit open-ended. In fact, they've done research where people almost kind of prefer to hear almost bad news. Someone's in a job and they're not sure, are they going to be fired or they're not going to be fired, there's almost a relief to just know, just tell me I'm stuck, I'm fired, rather than the uncertainty of, is it going to happen, is it not going to happen? And also in this situation as well, there's just so much uncertainty, and that really
it is
people's anxiety.
It's true. And as I said, a few moments ago, the challenge with being vulnerable in that circumstance and not having an end game or an answer is disconcerting. And it's very unsettling. But even within those dynamics, it's important for us to understand that we can, within ourselves, put a stop to what we are reading, what we are doing. There is no problem with putting on a series on Netflix or watching a movie we've seen 10 times, but just as a way of stopping that repetition and that negative thinking that's going on in our head. We also have to take a level of choice that we're going to decide, I'm going to stop X, Y, and Z. I'm going to not read anything else anymore. I'm not going to think anything else anymore. I'm going to do something else that makes me feel relaxed. And just that sort of distraction there is very comforting. So it can help manage that sort of lack of knowing what's happening and when it's going to end, because we can't answer that at this stage, which is difficult.
Yes, for sure. Okay, let's move on to a couple of questions. They're both from teens in Gibraltar, and they're both covering the same sort of topics. I'm gonna read both of them out, Deborah, and then maybe you can combine both of them and give us some tips. So one girl, 14-year-old, is saying, last week you suggested some tips for sleeping. I tried them and it hasn't worked for me. Is there anything else I can do? And another girl from Gibraltar, age 11, is saying, I have been experiencing nightmares at night and I can't sleep from the images I have seen. How do I get myself to have a good night's sleep while people in Israel are going through much more?
These
Deborah,
are
yours.
Yes, these are
help us get to sleep, Deborah.
Help us get to sleep. Well, like I said, we don't have a quick fix on that dynamic. Okay, we have to be mindful of a few things. First of all, we've spoken about what we're looking at, what we're watching, what we're reading. Okay, last week we did speak about the association between feeling connected to watching the news, to listening, to being on WhatsApp groups and hearing what people are saying, and almost a sense of responsibility that if we are engaged and if we are listening and reading, then to a certain degree, it's a level of connection to what's happening in Israel. This is not true. It's very, very important. We need to make sure ourselves, and our parents can tell us, come off your phone, put your phone away. It's not great to watch it late at night. At the end of the day, you guys know as well as I do, if we want to watch our phones late at night, we're going to find some way to do it. This is not good. This is very unhealthy. In general, anyway, we shouldn't be looking at our phones before we go to sleep. But you should and try by a certain point in the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, to say, end of my phone. Okay, put my phone away. Put my phone away. I'm going to put my phone away. It's a level of control. It's difficult to do. There's an element of being comforted by having access to our phones and reading what people are posting in WhatsApp groups. But we get a choice to say no. Having access to social media, WhatsApp groups before we go to sleep, that's what we're going to be thinking about when we put our phones down. Okay, and we do not want to be engaged in any of those things. Okay, so if we're talking about really trying to stimulate sleeping, we need to come off reading or looking at anything we are engaged in before we go to sleep. And I mean not just 5 minutes before, I mean a good few hours before. Watching a movie, playing games with your family, reading a good book, either of them that have nothing to do with anything, really silly things. These are distracting, they are relaxing, and they are very, very important. And what they do is they make a separation between what is happening in Israel and what is not. Plus, whilst this is not easy to do, I'm not saying it is easy, it is not. We can say, not right now. Not right now. I choose not right now. An image comes into your head, not right now. Okay? And that mantra to ourselves during that time, you're not trying to fool yourself, because yes, that picture or that video or that perspective will just pop back into our heads, but we can turn around and say, not right now. I'm not thinking about it right now. I will do so tomorrow morning. Now I say no. And it sounds, well, okay, is that it? That's all it's going to do? There is no quick fix, Yaakov. And I think that's the key. When we're looking at any type of anxiety, okay, the way in which we build confidence, which in other terms means the way in which we start believing in our ability to make a change, is by taking action. Action is not just doing something. Action is also making a decision. Guys, head, no. Sorry, no. I say no, not right now. And focusing on something else. These are some of the techniques. I'm not just saying the techniques, Yaakov, that I teach people. I'm talking about what I do for myself when I'm having those moments. And they happen a lot, especially at the moment. And by doing that, I can literally switch my mind off and say, right, okay, not thinking about that right now, just not. And slowly you will allow your brain to take a rest and go back to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sleep. I think one of the things we have to remember with sleep is, you know, if we think that when we normally fall asleep, we have to be in quite a relaxed state, need to be quite calm. Now, what often ends up happening when we are trying to fall asleep and we can't fall asleep is we start getting a bit irritated, we start getting a bit annoyed, and we're saying, I need to fall asleep. You know, why am I not falling asleep? I'm really tired. I should be falling asleep. And what that ends up doing is actually doing exactly the opposite, because it starts making us feel a bit riled, a bit agitated. And of course, then what sleep is further and further away. You can't, there's something, I remember an analogy I once saw when it comes to sleep. And if we actually, Deborah, if we do a good job, and who knows, it could be the people on here will be falling asleep, but we'll do also a relaxation exercise later that might also help. But when it comes to sleep, if you imagine, let's say, a really pretty, you know, I don't know, a nice bird lands on your windowsill, and you want to sort of get a bit closer, and maybe even to sort of, you know, maybe it's a budgie or something, or a parrot, and you want to sort of put it, you know, you want to hold it. And if you try to go close and try to grab the parrot, what's going to happen? The parrot is going to fly away. And sleep is very like that. If you try to grab sleep and you try to make yourself sleep, what's going to happen is the sleep is going to fly away. So what we have to kind of do is we have to accept that at the moment, particularly those teenagers in Israel, certainly, but really for all of us that are feeling unrelaxed, we're going into bed, we're not really calm. That's because throughout the day we haven't been that calm. What can easily happen is our bodies are just not in the best state to have a nice restful sleep. And so it could well be that for the next few days, and hopefully we'll get better, and unfortunately maybe get used to it, we will get better at sleeping. But we have to accept that it could well be that we're not going to get as great sleep and the quality and just feeling so rested like we have done before this whole horrible situation started, you know, over two weeks ago now. Okay, so it's also about accepting that the sleep might not be as good, putting into practice some of Deborah's skills, plus we'll do towards maybe a bit later on, we'll also do 1 or 2 relaxation exercises that might help things a little bit. Okay, so by the way, it's the Q&A that you need to send in your comments, not the chat. Q&A, if you want to send in any of your comments, doesn't matter what it is. And as you can see, I am trying to read them out. So we've got one over here. A lot of adults around me are talking about a lot of disturbing things and the war 24/7. And I just don't want to hear it. Any tips?
Yes.
Deborah, have you got any tips?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is certainly a nice breeding ground in the background for some of these sleep issues that we're talking about. So it's really interesting to hear that sort of connection and these things also coming up in the background. Look, guys, you know, straight up, the most effective way to be heard is to speak about something and to talk about it calmly. And, you know, when your parents are not in the middle of a conversation, because if they are talking about what's going on, there is obviously a high amount of charged feeling, anxieties, and they want to talk about things. So it's important not to have that discussion during a conversation, but to find a quiet moment. Okay, to find a moment where, you know, your parents are just, you know, perhaps, you know, getting some dinner ready or doing some laundry, or they're just sitting and reading, when it's a quiet moment and they're not in the middle of the discussions that some of you have been describing here. And to just, in a very calm and respectful way, to say to your mother, to your father, I hope it's all right to say, but I'm feeling quite anxious when I hear some of these stories that you're discussing, Dad's been discussing. And, you know, I know it's important to have these conversations and to talk about them, but is it possible maybe we can do it when I'm not in the room? Or if you want to have those conversations, I can go out of the room, but just give me a prior warning because it's causing me anxiety. I don't think that there is any parent that would hear that type of communication from their child and say, oh, what are you talking about? We all know as parents, I'm a mother to 5 children, we all know that we have to be very mindful when the news is on, when we have conversations, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. So if one of my children came to me and said, you know, I'm hearing things, I would be very happy to hear that perspective, because sometimes whilst we're all in a state of anxiety, it's not that your parents are doing it on purpose, it's just that they're constantly in the middle of that conversation. So remember, take a quiet time when they're not in the middle of a conversation. If that happens before you get a chance to speak to them, take yourself out of the room. Say, I just need to nip upstairs for a few minutes, go upstairs, take some time. When it's quiet, come back and say very calmly, very respectfully, it's hard for me. I know that you're not doing it on purpose, but it's causing me distress, okay? And they will hear you, but you have to be real when you speak. Isn't that right, Yaakov? I think that.
Yes, 100%. I think people automatically, we're all starting to feel it's getting a bit much. So it's not, you're not showing that you are insensitive or not caring. I think people get it, that it's all, we can't cope with it 24 hours a day. So there's nothing wrong with you saying it. And I think on a similar lines, another sort of Gibraltar contribute from Girls High School 16, I don't feel like I can do anything useful for Israel from here apart from praying. Is there nothing else I can do? And I love that question because it shows that you really care, you really want to help, you're feeling a little bit helpless, you want to do more. And look, as we know, that, you know, praying is absolutely vital at this part. We're not all on the front lines, but in different ways we can absolutely contribute. But also, I think what's really important, this is what Deborah was saying a little bit before, and we said it last week, but we have to we say it for ourselves as well as anyone else. We have to remember that this war is not about, you know, some terrorists trying to hurt Israel. This is really attacking us as a Jewish people. They didn't discriminate between who they were going to attack, men, women, children. It was us. And what they want to do is they want to stop our way of life, and they want us to stop being who we are. And so in a way, what we can do actually is just being us. And that means carrying on and doing the things that we enjoy and living. And, you know, whatever we were doing before, obviously it's harder in certain ways, but they want to stop our way of life. And our way and our response is by saying, no, you are not going to be able to stop us. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what rockets you fly. It doesn't matter the threats that you make. But like we've been here for the last 3,000 years, we are still here now. And that is your response. And so therefore, we can all carry on doing that. And when you go out with your friends, and when you chat, and when you, do something nice, in a certain way, you are also saying, no one is going, these horrible people are not going to stop us. And so
yes, I think if I can add to that, Yaakov, what you're saying is absolutely correct. But let's take a look at some of these very large efforts that have been going on in order to provide support to Israel in every capacity, both financially, both look what's going on this evening in Raleigh Close, the packaging, what happened a few days ago at the JLE, packaging food packages, clothes for the people that have been displaced. These are very large charitable projects to support the country. This is huge. It's massive, yes. But let's just bring that back down to basics. What is actually going on? What are these organizations, these groups of people, what are they doing? They are providing acts of kindness. That's the fundamental principle of what, even no matter how many people turn up, no matter how much money is given, these are acts of kindness. And there is no act of kindness that is greater than one another, because we never know the impact of kindness on the people that we give it to. Even if you see a guy at the supermarket and he doesn't have a 50p piece or whatever it is to put in the trolley, and you hand him over one just to give him the opportunity to find it easier, we don't know the impact of that kindness. So what I would also add, Yaakov, to what you're saying, that apart from what you are doing, the praying is beautiful. It's beautiful. In addition to that, no matter how small, every small act of kindness, whether it's to a fellow Jew or it's not to a fellow Jew, every act of kindness is the foundation with what our religion rests upon. That's who we are, about thinking about the other, about thinking about our neighbor, treating our neighbor in the way that we want to be treated. The way that you can feel that you can give, and that we all feel that we can give, no matter how small, is every opportunity you have to be kind to somebody else, take it. And you will see that if you, in your mind, you feel, right, I've seen that this person, this standard stuff, and a lady's trying to walk across the road, her bags are too heavy, my friend doesn't have a pen at school. All of these small things contribute to helping us do exactly what Yaakov said, which is being who we are. And whether that constitutes sending something directly to Israel or it doesn't, it's the same thing. So just enhance whatever you are doing with more and more acts of kindness, and that in turn will make you feel good and feel connected to this natural. It's beautiful to read these questions, Yaakov, because exactly as you said, you can hear the desire for people to become more connected and to become what can I do? It's a wonderful thing to see. So don't feel just because you're not engaged in X, Y, or Z that there's no room for you to give. It's everywhere. We just have to look for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's a nice one from a 15-year-old in London. I know what's going on and it upsets me, but my family doesn't discuss it, which is fine for me. However, my class speak about it a lot, especially the political aspects of the protests. I feel stupid for not knowing enough, and now I'm tempted to look up stuff, even though I know I don't want to. How do I find the right balance? I'm just smiling at this because some of you might have heard of what's called FOMO, where we often, with the fear of missing out, and we feel that everyone else seems to know more than us, and we feel that we're missing out, and we also have to know. And I guess in this situation, it can easily happen. I think this is what you're experiencing. You're feeling that you do know a certain amount, but there's other people that know all the latest. But it's interesting because, as what Deborah and I have said already last week and also this week, what people are actually starting to do because of their anxiety, and I've done this on myself. A few days ago, I just said enough is enough. To all these updates, and they're not great listening and looking at. It's too much. It is too much for me. It's not helping me feel better. I don't need to know the headlines the whole time. So actually, I think you are the lucky one who hasn't been exposed to all these horrible things. And I think some of your friends that might at the moment be reveling in the fact that they do know, they might soon start realizing that actually it's not such a great idea. As well as that, you have to realize that we're on here because most of us will be feeling certain emotions. We might be feeling a bit worried. We might be feeling a bit guilty, sorry. We might be feeling, terrible about what's going on in Israel and for the soldiers. And a lot of us on here are going to have really nice, lovely feelings about those that are struggling. But not everyone is going to be like that. And some people, they just don't connect, and they might not feel about the whole Israel story like you do. And for them, it's just more of it's latest news. It's like, wow, it's drama. And so some people might not be necessarily as bothered about it like you might be, but ultimately, as we've seen already, too much information is not necessarily a good thing.
I agree, Yaakov, and I also think it's a very interesting question, actually, that you've just raised, that's been raised to us this evening, that you read. The reason why it's interesting is because it's not spoken about so much at home, not so overly bothered about being so exposed, but actually being within a social dynamic makes me want to be able to know more or to be able to contribute more. And I think the question to ask ourselves in that dynamic is what is the reason why I want to have more information? Is it because I want to be what was described to me this week as a keyboard warrior, which is, using my position and my connection to be able to fight my perspective and my corner, which is absolutely fine? Or is it to feel a level of social sort of acceptance or part of the group by being able to contribute? Or are you hearing things that you disagree with, that you're not happy about hearing and you want to answer back? I think before going down the road of reading up on what's going on when you haven't necessarily needed or wanted to do that up until now, might not be enough of a reason to do so, because it's not a very good idea to get online and start reading about what's happening. And I think if you can understand to this person what it is that's driving why you want to do that, it's better to come in from that angle first before just finding the solution of getting online and finding out more information. Because if you can understand what's driving you and it's not really enough of a reason to need to expose yourself, then I would say enjoy the bliss and don't expose yourself unless you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got some really fabulous questions and people being open, and that's really what tonight's about. As we said at the beginning, so some of you sort of had logged on a bit later because we had problems with the details, and I apologize for that. But it's about we're coming together. We're here. We're sharing our feelings. We're sharing our emotions. And we're all, wherever we are around the world, and we can already see different people messaging around the world, we are all here coping with what is something that's been thrust upon us, but we're here together, and that's what's so important. And we do really feel for, this is a boy who's messaged in and saying that there are boys who are their first year in yeshiva, and they're only going to do 1 year of yeshiva, as their parents only let them stay for 1 year. But now I'm in London and my parents don't want me to be back in Israel. So how am I meant to deal with this, staying in London when I'm basically told to stay at home most of the time and not be with friends? And that is really tough, Deborah, because this was his year. And I'm sure there'll be, there'll probably be quite a lot of seminary girls with the same issue. This was their year. We saw this in COVID quite a bit. This was their time, and it's been taken away from them.
It's very difficult. Let's just say, Yaakov, in response to that it hasn't been taken away. Okay, again, what we're doing is we are being very mindful about a timeline that we're looking at, that we don't have definitively, for sure. There's no question about that. But, we're not saying that this dynamic and the situation that we're in is sort of stretched right all the way through. Plus, we are only in October. Okay, we're only in October, and that doesn't mean that the year is out and that the year has been lost. It's a very difficult time, and what might be worthwhile doing is sitting down with your parents and having a look over the next 2 weeks. Let's see what happens over the next 2 weeks, with potentially looking at, can we make a decision towards the first week in November? Can we reevaluate the discussion? So that in itself will give a sort of an obstacle in that perspective, that I've lost my year, that it's a period of time that's taking place right now, and let's reevaluate at the beginning of November. We will know more at that time. Okay, and at the same time, with not being able to go out, it does feel like COVID. It's very, very difficult for some people, and I think that this actually ties quite interestingly into one of the other questions about, we're teenagers in London. We want to be able to see our friends in Hendon and Golders Green. Our parents don't want us to be doing that, but we can't just be at home without seeing friends. I think it's very important that we are able to go out and see our friends. I think it's critical, but it's important, again, to communicate with your parents that in doing so, you are going to be mindful about what that means. That doesn't mean hanging out in the street at night. That means at least possibly being at somebody else's house, having rides to and from, so you're not walking in the streets on your own. And I think that these type of dynamics and this type of communication, again, respectfully, without shouting or screaming or getting really angry with your parents, this is what we want to do. If we get a lift there, if we're all together, if we're staying at someone's house and we're not walking down the streets and doing whatever, what do you think? Is that possible? And I think you've got more chance of your parents saying yes and okay, as long as they know where you are and who you're with and what's happening, because it's difficult to be a teenager, but it's very difficult to be parents of a teenager because we worry. And I think if we can have that communication as effective as possible, that might alleviate some of that breakdown in communication that's just from the parent side, you're not going out, which needs to be, I think, worked on and spoken through. And there's room for that. Do you agree with that, Yaakov? Do you think that that's...
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like what we've said before, it's a very hard balance, and each place and the situation might well change. So we can't make hard, fast rules at the moment, what is safe and what isn't safe. But one thing we do have to be very careful, and this takes a lot of wisdom and balance to make sure that you're just doing things right. Because if we don't care, well, then we're just being irresponsible and we're putting ourselves in harm's way, and that's not the right thing to do. But if we start being too safe and overly cautious, which is not required, then all that does is it tells our minds, yes, we might be physically safe, but emotionally we are feeling trapped, maybe like this boy is feeling. We're at home, we're not doing the things that we enjoy, we're not being with our friends. So it's really hard to try and get the middle, and everyone's middle will be different. So, the teens that are here from Israel, your middle is going to be different than, a middle of some in a different country. But everyone will have that middle, and the middle will be the line where you're being careful, but at the same time, you are doing what you're able to do. And that means, for example, if we're talking about the UK, that means that, as Deborah, you've just said, yes, we still, in certain ways, maybe in the daytime, maybe we have to change a bit, but we don't have to be locked up in our houses. We can be getting out. We can do quite a few of the things that we usually do. It just might need a bit of thinking about beforehand to work out. It might a change of, do it a bit earlier, maybe with more friends, just rather than just two of you. But it needs thinking about. But it's going to be really important, because the way anxiety works is if we're checking over our shoulder, that's walking. People have messaged into JTeen this week, and you can so easily see why it could happen. But we can walk down the street. There's two types of ways of walking down the street. So we can walk down the street like we would have done 2 weeks ago, and just normally walk down the street regularly, or we walk down the street and we're looking and seeing who's coming, and we're all nervous and we're moving around and we're suspecting and we're suspicious. And if we start doing that too much, then what type of walking is that? That's a walking of anxiety and fear, and it's telling our minds that we're under attack. Now, is that really required? Well, right now in the situation that we're living in, thank God, is absolutely not required. Do we need to be a little bit more careful than we were 2 weeks ago? Yes. So when we're walking, we might sort of just be slightly bit more aware than we would have been before. But we definitely don't need to start fearing everything. And it's important to make sure that we, keep that middle line. Okay. So much negativity is, and I know that someone wants the we will do the relaxation exercise. So I know someone else has also mentioned about that. We'll do one question, then we'll do the relaxation exercise. Okay, and that relaxation exercise is also going to help the person who's messaged in about panic attacks. We'll do relaxation exercise in a minute that will also help with that. Deborah, so much negativity is all around me. Everyone is just so down. How do I stay positive when there's a lot of negativity around me? And that's from a 17-year-old from Antwerp.
It's very difficult, because there is not a huge desire at all to want to be happy, to want to celebrate. Even people whose birthday is think, should I taper it down a little bit? It feels wrong to be happy at the moment. Okay, and it's a very difficult one when we are seeing everybody around us in a negative way that unfortunately we can't prevent, because what's actually taken place is very sad and very frightening and negative. And because it's not finished yet, those feelings are going to exacerbate, they are going to continue, and that's what we can expect with this situation. I think that by staying positive, it's actually wonderful to hear a question like that, because what you're hearing is somebody that is noticing the challenges that other people are experiencing, which is a very empathetic perspective. And even though the question comes along as how do I keep myself positive, it's also reflecting an awareness that everybody else is feeling particularly sad. So actually, Yaakov, I would, in this instance, suggest flipping it on its head. And with that positivity that you feel, when you see that somebody's sad, give them a hug, give them a word of encouragement. And by doing that, you are sort of handing out your positivity by giving support to other people, which helps you sustain a level of positivity within a very dark situation. And also, again, that takes us back to these acts of kindness. That's just looking out for people around us. Another option is to, in moments where you see things are particularly difficult and the people around you are particularly sad, and even if you say anything of that nature, it's not necessarily working, this is an absolutely fine opportunity to take some time by yourself, to watch a movie, to talk to some friends, to go and do something that makes you feel happy, and just be aware, again, like you said earlier, Yaakov, that this is where I'm at right now. This is the dynamic that we're in at the moment, to be accepting of that fact that irrespective of what we want, we're not going to be able to have all the people around us positive and happy and chirpy. It's not going to be the case for the moment. So
No.
those are two different perspectives of managing that positivity, sustaining it, one by giving, one by taking some time, and the other one by being sort of accepting of the situation that we're in.
And when we are feeling negative, and when we feeling a bit anxious, or as we saw before from one girl from Belgium that is feeling a bit panicky, let's first remember that would be absolutely very, very normal. So, we're all, panic is often caused because we're just really stressed. And when that stress sort of flows over, then we can easily feel panicky, and some people might end up getting a panic attack. Are we stressed right now? Yes. Does it mean just because we're not necessarily in Israel on the front lines that we can't be stressed? No, because our stress is based on our feelings. It's based on some of the things going on in our lives. Without this, there are many people that weren't finding it easy before this happened, and this maybe has just sort of brought you over the edge. And so what we're going to do, we're going to do a relaxation exercise. It's a bit random, but that's what it's all about. We are here, we're together. So we're going to do a relaxation exercise, slightly different than last week. See if you like it. You can come on next week and you can tell us if it was good, if it wasn't good. The exercise is called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Okay, and what it's used for is to just help us very often if we're feeling very nervous and we're feeling panicky and our minds are all over the place, overwhelmed, loads of thoughts, loads of pictures, images, videos, everything flying in. It's really important that we just have a few moments where we just get back into our zone. We just feel where we are. So the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise goes like this. Now you'll have to remember last week, and those that weren't there, it's easy to do. We know how to breathe. We all know how to breathe. And if you don't know how to breathe, then you wouldn't be on the Zoom. But what we don't all know how to do is to breathe slowly. And the power of breathing really slow and calm is it spreads calm throughout the body. So I want you all to lean back on your chair, or if you're wherever you are, and just lean back and just very calmly just breathe in, not too deep, just a few seconds, 4 seconds, roughly, each person according to what's best. And then gently breathe out. And as you're breathing out, you can just tell yourself, calm. Okay, and I'm going to do a bit quicker because I'm aware of the time. So I want you to do that, usually for 1 or 2 minutes, just to get some nice feelings, that you're feeling a bit calmer. It's not magic, so it doesn't mean you're going to feel a different person, but it might just make you feel a little bit calmer. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to follow me, and I want you to look round, and I want you to notice 5 things. 5 things wherever you are. They don't have to be exciting things, but look around where you are and try to notice 5 things that are around you. And I am looking around, as we see, and I'm looking at each thing and I'm saying, right, I can see a picture on the wall. And then I'm looking around and I see a book on the table. Okay, and I want you to look around yourself to see what 5 things, and just tell yourself, what 5 things can you see? Okay, and all the while still be breathing nice and calmly. And then what I want you to do is 4. I want you to touch 4 things. Doesn't matter what. 4 things I want you to try to touch. And just be aware they've got different feelings. I'm touching a tissue. It's one of the things I'm touching. I feel feeling of the tissue. The table could be an item of clothing. 4 things that you can touch. Okay, and now we're going to use another sense. We're now going to use it listening. So I want you to try to listen out for 3 things, and I'm going to help you with this because what I've got ready here is a ticking clock. And I'm going to make that a bit louder. So you should be able to hear a ticking clock. And there should be maybe some other sounds around you, or it's just the sound of my voice. But try to pay attention to 3 sounds. Okay, and we're doing this a bit quicker. You can do this a bit longer if you want. Well, the number 2 is, and you might not be able to do this now because it might not be ready, but you can do this a bit later, are 2 things. What can you taste? What 2 things can you taste? Could be just a drink of water. It could be a little bit something to eat. Taste 2 things and just notice the 2 things that you're tasting. And the final thing is, because we've done 5 for seeing, 4 for touching, 3 for listening, 2 for tasting, and 1 is just to feel an emotion that you're feeling right now. Are you feeling still a bit worried? Are you feeling maybe nothing? Angry? Stressed? It doesn't matter. Feel, what emotion am I feeling? And that's a really nice exercise just to bring you back. If you're feeling nervous, a bit panicky, try to bring yourself back to the here and the now. And I'm going to read out a couple more questions. And I know we haven't been able to get to everything. We will do this again next week. My friend was outing her pain of the situation in Israel on me. She has a lot of family there, and I didn't know what to answer her because I'm just saying it's going to be okay, but it's not really helping her. What should we say in this situation, Deborah? It's such an important point because I know from those that messaged us on JTeen that it's so many people, even if they're not struggling themselves, they've got friends that are struggling. And how can they help those friends?
It's actually correct when we say that, you know, if I just turn around and say it's going to be fine, that it doesn't really work. Okay. And we have to remember that sometimes, you know, you know, and your friend knows that you don't have an answer. The reason being is because, as we've discussed this evening, we don't have answers. We don't have time frames. We just don't know. So what we don't want to do is try and provide sort of light-headed perspectives of this is what's going to be and it will be all right, because it doesn't work. So the one thing we can do is we can disarm somebody, right, by agreeing that what they're saying is true. So if somebody is speaking about their family in Israel and how stressful and the challenges that they're feeling and their worries, that listen, just be quiet and listen to what they're saying, hear the words that are being said, because you have been chosen as a platform for this person to be able to feel comfortable to say, oh my gosh, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. And just simply say, it's really, really tough. It's really, really tough. And I'm so sorry that you're going through this. And we don't have any answers, but please God, it will be okay. Obviously, we don't know at this stage, but it's really, really difficult. Just by saying that, combined with a little bit of, you know, please God, it will be all right, but it's very tough. It's very hard for you, and I really understand. And, you know, you can please feel comfortable to reach out to me at any time you want to talk about it, or you're having a difficult time. I'm here. Not because you're going to be providing solutions, because if you had them, we'd all like to hear them. Okay, but because we don't know, but it doesn't mean that we can't offer anything anyway. We can just say it's true, it's horrendous, and it must be very, very difficult for you. And I think that technique is very helpful.
And really, as you're saying, Deborah, at times like this, that's who we have. We have our friends. Those are probably, you know, one of our greatest tools that are going to help us get through this situation are our loved ones, and those are our friends, and those are the, whether it's, people who we feel very comfortable with. That could be parents, could be mentors, it could be teachers, could be other family members, close friends. These are the people that we share our pain with, we feel comfortable with, and they just help to unburden us from some of the load which we are all feeling. So it's great that you're obviously a really caring friend, and it's great that you've got each other. It's really late, everyone. I just want to, there's a couple of things that we didn't manage to get to. I'm aware of that. We will, as we said, we will be on next week as well. So feel free to come on. You can tell your friends. We are here. This is the time that we talk about these things, and we pray that we have an easier week, and we pray that the situation in Israel is going to be a lot quieter, and that we can all go back to day-to-day life. But we also know that either way, that we are going to be here, and JTeen, as well as our text line and phone line, is there for you. So if you do feel that you need more support, then you know where we are. So on that note, I want to wish you all a really good night. Thank you for coming on, and please fill out the form if possible right at the end. We love your feedback, and thank you very, very much for all the lovely messages. We so appreciate it, Deborah. I'm speaking on behalf of Deborah, but we said last week, it's really inspiring.
Absolutely, it really is, and we're really glad to have the opportunity to be able to help to answer these questions. So thank you so much for joining.
Deborah, thank you from being in Israel, from all the things that you're managing. We really, really thank you for coming on tonight. It means a lot. Thank you, and we'll see you all next week. Take care, and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.